Within just a few months of introducing this measure, a bipartisan majority of the entire U.S. House of Representatives joined not merely as supporters, but as co-sponsors. That's a profound statement of the strong support that the Iranian resistance has among the people of the United States. And it wasn't long after that the Iranian people rose up to reclaim their freedom from their tormentors and oppressors in Tehran. Well, the free world must recognize that the people of Iran want this regime gone in its entirety. And to help them, the United States must adopt two policies outlined by former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at a meeting with Mrs. Maryam Rajavi just hours before the October 7th attack occurred in the Middle East.
As the chief Democratic sponsor of House Resolution 100, I'm pleased that it expresses our support for the Iranian people's desire for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear Republic of Iran, and condemns the violations of human rights and the state-sponsored terrorism of the Iranian regime. You know, I've been in Congress for 27 years. I've been a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee for 27 years, where I am the most senior Democrat, and I have been fighting on these issues with you for 27 years. I share your dream of a free Iran, an Iran where people can make their voices heard, where they're not threatened by terrorism, imprisonment, torture, rape, and execution. An Iran where women are free to decide how they dress and people are free to share their government. An Iran where Mahsa Amini and countless women like her would be alive today. That's why for decades we have worked together to replace this brutal regime. As the Iranian people continue to courageously fight for freedom, the American people need to be there. The American Congress needs to be there. And we need to pass Resolution 100.
Let me begin with the truth, that the United States Congress unequivocally supports the Iranian people's aspiration for a democratic, secular, and non-nuclear republic, and we as a nation call for the protection of dissidents, both inside and outside Iran, without any hesitation. While the U.S. and our allies do what is right to pressure Iran and its partners in the region, we must also acknowledge the people of Iran for pushing for this change. I was honored to do my part when I joined my colleagues from both sides of the aisle, something very rare you see here on Hill, for us to co-sponsor the House resolution in support of the Iranian people and condemning human rights violations.
We have people who are political prisoners here today, and you're going to hear from some of them. But the women of Iran in particular need to be called out for their bravery, for their vision, and for their willingness to stand up for not only their future, but for freedom of every Iranian. We know that we cannot rest until we see Iran free, democratic, secular, and non-nuclear.
So, in this case, what is true evil in the form of the IRG? I'll end by saying there's 8 things that I think we as a body need to focus on. One, it's maximum pressure on the Iranian regime. We can't be ashamed to say that we oppose this regime, and we should literally put a boot on the throat in any form and fashion that we can, economically, culturally, with sanctions, when necessary, with military and kinetic means if substantiated. We need to make sure that there is no joint comprehensive POA moving forward, no Iran nuclear deal. We need to do everything we can to make sure that they're not developing nuclear weapons. The joint comprehensive plan of action was none of those words. It wasn't joint, it wasn't comprehensive, and it wasn't a true plan of action. It was an enabler for the nascent nuclear program that we see now going parabolic.
And I believe that the maximum pressure campaign under the Trump administration was working. It was economically crippling, and I think it was a mistake to reverse course on the progress that was made by the previous administration. And that is why my colleagues and I have introduced legislation to reinstate sanctions, to gut Iran's ability to fund terrorism throughout the region, to sanction the supreme leader, and to force the president to enforce sanctions on Iran's oil sales. That is what we need to do if we are serious about being tough on this oppressor. I appreciate the work that you're doing. Know that you have bipartisan support here in Congress, and we will continue to rally with you to defeat this oppressor, to make sure that the people of Iran have human rights, have dignity, have free and fair elections.
We need to talk about all of that has one solution: regime change in Iran. That is the solution. This is not that complicated. And we should not be shy. We should not be scared of advocating for that. I want to thank you for not giving up. And I am convinced that because of all of you and heroes in Iran who are sacrificing and giving so much for the cause of freedom, that Iran will be free.
I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I wholeheartedly support the desire for a democratic and a non-nuclear Iran. A lot of the problems that we're having in the country or in the world right now would not be a problem if we did not have the regime in Iran that we currently have. We need to be tough with Iran. We need to shut off all of the money. We need to enforce the sanctions. If we don't, we are going to find ourselves in a war in the Middle East, and we cannot afford to do that.
As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and serving as chairwoman of the Indo-Pacific Subcommittee, I'm committed to holding Raisi and his terrorist-supporting cohort accountable for the regime's support for terrorist proxies around the Middle East and for the crimes against humanity that it commits against its own people.
Your work inside, not only by yourself, but with members of Congress, has not only paid off, but is a reality today. What is talked about, whether it's by one of our Navy SEALs or whether it's talked about by just another member of Congress, is that the Iranians have chosen to have a proxy war against you and the United States of America and free people. This is not one group of people against another in Congress, but rather we have a common alliance on this issue. And that is your work, and I congratulate you.
I am from the great state of Wisconsin, and one of my friends who lives there, his name is Kevin Hermaning. He was the youngest hostage taken when the embassy was seized by Khomeini. And if you ever think my resolve will bend in support of your resistance movement, I want you to come to Wisconsin and sit down with me and Kevin, and we'll talk.
The National Council of Resistance of Iran, or NCRI, is in their endeavor to create a democratic and inclusive government where there is freedom. Would y'all enjoy freedom if you could get it over there? Absolutely. In Congress, we've introduced several bills advocating for the safety, security, and rights of the Iranian people. Most recently, my fellow Texan Lance Gooden introduced House Resolution 627, which condemns the regime for the massacre of political prisoners in 1988. And I can do this without notes. What was it? Now, sir, about 30,000 people, give or take. I mean, it's unbelievable how bad it has been and still continues to be.
We have a common goal. We understand an evil theocracy that's caused hate and discontent all over the world is oppressing a very good people, our friends. Those who are being held under the thumb of a small minority of violent people who would do harm, not just to an entire populace, but also to a gender,